Hello, welcome to HLA Live. HLA Live is our regular broadcast on the HLA YouTube channel as well as all the other social media channels. Each week we talk to interesting people from across the HLA community.
Good evening, everyone. I am really excited to be chairing tonight's meeting.
Hi, I'm Rosie Spooner and I'm hosting HLA Live this Wednesday.
And I'm an HLA scholar and I'm also going to be your host this evening.
To share with us their ideas and their innovations and hopefully bring them to a global audience.
Quite quick, we have ideas, let's do this, let's do that. So
many of the topics come from our community, with scholars and faculty expressing an interest in many of the discussions that we're about to have.
Hello everyone and welcome to the HLA Live session on widening participation in the postgraduate realm.
Homelessness and health.
Addiction and the new normal.
HLA programs are built on 6 pillars. The leader is an innovator and entrepreneur. The leader is a communicator. The leader is a manager. The leader as a negotiator. The leader as a follower, and the leader as a philosopher. If you are interested in becoming a HLA scholar, why not get in contact? Many of the episodes in HLA Live will cover one or more of these important pillars. The HLA team consists of Pedra, Eamon, Tim, Riddy, Alistair, Adil and Trisha, and a range of other HLA scholars and faculty.
Hi, my name's Dr. Anita Mitra and I'm an Obs and Gynae trainee in London, and it's a real honour to be invited to speak today. So the title of my talk is Doctor by Day, Scientist, Author, Influencer by Night. I'm just really here to talk to you a little bit about what's been a slightly unusual career for me and the slightly unusual things that I've done, in the hope that maybe some of you be inspired to use some of the amazing information, knowledge and expertise that you have to help other trainees, other doctors that you work with, but also our patients. So who am I? So Dr. Anita Mitra, BSc, MBCHB, PhD. Nothing really particularly fantastic there. I think a lot of you will have obviously been to medical school and many of you will have postgraduate degrees. I've had a little bit of what I call an off-piste career. So I always wanted to become a doctor. And then I didn't get into medical school the first time. So I went to Leicester University to do a Bachelor of Medical Biochemistry. And during this time, I started working in a research lab, and we were doing research about phytonutrients, so the kind of chemicals that are in plants and how they have anti-cancer mechanisms. And during this time in the lab, I actually worked with lots of surgeons who were doing their PhDs and MDs. And this was the first time that I realized that you could actually combine science with a medical career. I then went on to do a 5-year medical degree at Leicester Medical School. And during this time, I continued working in research, in the research lab, and then with a professor of kidney transplant surgery. And I thought I wanted to be a kidney transplant surgeon. Then I did my Obs and Gynae placement quite at the end of my medical school, actually. And I had an incredible consultant who basically took me to do everything that she did and just showed me what a fascinating career and fascinating specialty it actually is. So then that's when I decided that I wanted to do Obs and Gynae. So I did my foundation training, and then I didn't get into Obs and Gynae the first time that I tried. But, you know, this isn't a tale of woe is me, because, you know, eventually I ended up getting onto the specialist training program, which is what I'm still doing now. And I also got a PhD on the vagina, if you read the Times, from Imperial College London. Now, during this time that I was doing my PhD, I was recruiting patients in the colposcopy clinic. So patients who are coming to clinic with an abnormal smear test result. As many of you may know, these are often very young women who maybe haven't had any symptoms, have never ever been to a hospital to see a specialist before. And I was really amazed by all the really sort of fascinating conversations that I was having with them, questions that patients were asking, and often things that maybe weren't really what we thought our patients wanted to know. And so I was doing my colposcopy training at the time, and we have a mentor, so somebody who firstly directly observes us, and then afterwards they sit outside the clinic, and then we do the clinic and call them in if we need help. And so I'd have my debrief session with my consultant every week, and I'd say to him, oh, this patient asked me about this. And he said, what? A patient actually asked you that? And so I started to realize that as sort of a young female and someone who, I'm quite chatty with my patients, I really started to realize that there were so many unanswered questions, but also there was so much information out there that just wasn't really appealing to patients. And certainly if you think about the leaflets that we give people about contraception, so I think you may have seen them, for example, in GP clinics. They're the very sort of like plain folded up A4 sheets of paper, which are quite brightly colored, but actually most of them were written before my patients were born. So I thought, hey, need to do something about this. And so I also realized that patients were exposed to a lot of misinformation. So this is an article that was on Facebook about vaccines being laced with artificial coloring chemicals made with aluminium. Another one here, an Instagram account talking about how much money Merck were making from the vaccine. I think I'm beginning to understand what the campaign against anti-vaxxers is all about. And this one, which is really quite entertaining, I think. So how much do you get paid for each HPV vaccine? Chad Hayes, who's a really fun pediatrician in the States, if you don't follow him on Twitter, very interesting guy, says less than the florists get paid for the flowers at the funeral for someone who dies from HPV-related cancer. I also noticed that the wellness industry was really starting to get very big on social media. And I'd started using Instagram, and there was lots of sort of fitness and wellness bloggers that I was following. And I started to notice lots of companies starting to advertise through them. And so this is somebody, I won't name her, but she wrote a blog post in conjunction with Natural Cycles, which is a natural contraceptive app. The article was entitled Contraception with No Side Effects. So sounds very, very enticing to a young woman, particularly because we know that there are lots of awful side effects that you can get from lots of contraceptives that we use. Now, it wasn't quite true that this contraception was without side effects for her, because this was the side effect. And she actually fell pregnant whilst using this app, which at the time, maybe wasn't a bad thing for her, but bearing in mind that a lot of the people who follow these accounts are very young, impressionable women, I really thought that it was quite important to really get some evidence-based, credible information out there for women. So I started my Instagram account called the Gynae Geek. Obviously, this was not without severe reservation on my side and a lot of encouragement from my friends. I think that imposter syndrome is something that's really, really huge in medicine, because let's be honest, when it comes to medicine, there's always somebody who knows more than you about something. But from starting the account, I realized that as someone who was quite young and had an insight into what our patients wanted to know, I did manage to find a way of talking to an audience on social media. And I don't like to sort of look at numbers, but I really didn't think that many people would be interested. I thought my mum and some of my friends would follow me, but now 116,000 people follow my Instagram account, which in itself is overwhelming. But bearing in mind that in a clinic, in a really busy clinic, if I really bust my gut, then I could see maybe 10, 12 women, but from posting on social media, I can now talk to 116,000 people, which is overwhelming. But I think a great way of getting information out there, because people want really quick information. They want it now. No one really reads an entire blog even these days. People just want really short, snappy information. So down the side of the screen are some of the topics that I talk about. So, my sort of research background was in colposcopy and HPV, cervical screening, but I also talk a lot about endometriosis, contraception. Cervical ectropion is something that I found myself drawing so many diagrams of in the clinic. And apparently if you Google cervical ectropion, my picture comes up on Google search on the images. So if you're ever in need, then give it a Google. And I also talk about some slightly sort of abstract topics that we maybe don't cover all the time in clinic. So things like vaginal seeding. So you may have heard of people using a swab on their baby's face after having cesarean section. So that's what that is. Labiaplasty, also involved in awareness campaigns, for example, about period poverty. Lots of people ask about hormonal detoxes. I cover that kind of thing. And I also like to do a little bit of female empowerment. So yeah, that's what I do on my account. And so as well as Instagram posts, I do like to make videos as well, because, actually writing something so juicy or something where you want to have something that's relevant for everyone is really difficult to do in an Instagram caption. You've got 2,200 characters, including spaces. So it can be quite challenging, but again, that is a skill that we do get, specifically in the research world, because, we've all been trying to cram in that 300-word abstract, haven't we? I also don't know if I consider myself an artist, but I do like to produce a little bit of art, if you would be so kind as to call it that. So these are just some examples of what I did. For example, the difference between adenomyosis and endometriosis, something I find myself explaining a lot. And, again, the whole topic of imposter syndrome, I feel like I talk about this all the time, but to start with, I was a bit embarrassed to get my pictures out and show them to my patients in clinic. But actually, it makes life so much easier. We've all got those drawings, whatever specialty you're in. They're those drawings that we find ourselves drawing again and again on the back of, a consent form or something in a biro. So I just keep these saved in my favorites section on my phone. And I've also been involved in a lot of podcasts. And so this has been a really great way of, again, talking about slightly juicier topics at length. And another way of kind of working my way into the wellness industry. So for example, collaborating with beauty bloggers, fitness bloggers, people who have exactly the right audience that I'm trying to target. So it's really the young, well population who really needs this information, because I may not get to meet them myself in clinic. I also wrote a book. So I feel like I should have just called this talk The Imposter Syndrome, but honestly, this was the biggest step in dealing with imposter syndrome, because after I wrote a couple of blog posts and Instagram posts, I started to get emails from publishers. And I just thought, oh, what is this? This is junk mail. This is not for me. No one wants me to write a book. And they just kept coming. And I happened to mention it to my friend, Rupi Orschler, who some of you may know as the Doctor's Kitchen. And so I actually met him via Instagram, actually. So it's a great place to network as well. And he said to me, come on, Anita, you definitely can write a book, and I really think you should. And I'm going to introduce you to my literary agents, because Rupi's written a couple of cookbooks. They're very good, highly recommend. And I thought, okay, fine, I'll meet her, and then I'll just kind of politely brush her off. But, let's just vaguely investigate it. So I went for a meeting with her, and she kind of got me thinking, maybe I can actually do this. And I said, look, I actually have to finish my PhD thesis, which I'm submitting on the 1st of December. So could we maybe sort of talk again then? In the meantime, lots of other companies and agents got in touch with me as well. And I just said the same thing to them. And I submitted my thesis. And on the 1st of December, I had 9 emails from agents and publishers. So I realized there was a huge appetite for this kind of thing. And so I sat down, I wrote a proposal, realized actually I had more to say than I thought. And then my agent and I went to several publishers. I did this on a day off. I think I had 12 publishing companies that were interested in the book. And I said, oh, I don't have time for that. Let's just pick the 4 that we like the best. And so I went to meet 4 of them. And then I ended up publishing it with HarperCollins. And it was published in March last year. And was probably one of the most overwhelming experiences of my life. And I really love seeing people posting about it on Instagram, because I just really wanted it to be a conversation starter, and also a way that people could just get credible information. And so I wouldn't say it's a textbook, and it's definitely not trying to be the next Adam Kay, but maybe it's kind of a little bit of something in between. So I do talk about anonymous anecdotes, and I have filled it with lots and lots of evidence-based information, and there's tons of references at the back. Now, lots of people say to me, well, you know, what about the GMC? What about the rules? And how comfortable do you feel posting things on social media? So the rules about this are very grey. And so there is a guideline that was written in 2013. And I think that we'll all agree that social media has changed massively since 2013. But what they do say is that there are benefits of using social media as a doctor. So engaging people in public health and policy discussions, definitely. Establishing national and international professional networks, well, that's definitely something that I've done, not just meeting my friend Rupi, but I'll explain a little bit more in the next few slides. And then also facilitating patients' access to information about health and services. So yeah, I really think that it's a way that we can educate our patients. And I always say that I use it for health education, not health advice. And I will never ever answer direct medical questions from patients. And that's really difficult because I do get lots of messages from people. But I kind of use the kind of questions they ask me to shape the kind of content that I do put out. The other thing is about when you post material online, you should be open about any conflict of interest and declare any financial or commercial interests. And I think this is something that has been quite topical lately, because there was a pretty nasty article that was published in the Daily Mail, or the Mail on Sunday, about doctors using social media. And whilst there are, you know, maybe some doctors who maybe make some questionable choices about what they post on social media in terms of affiliations with brands, I think it's really important that we are really clear about this. And it's certainly something that I've made as a rule for myself, that I wouldn't promote a healthcare product to patients, because, you know, that's what the NHS is for. Is you shouldn't be getting your healthcare products online. And I very much use it as information and education. And that's another little rule that I really made for myself, is that I'm very aware that anybody can read what I've written on social media, and anybody is very able to report me to the GMC if they don't agree with what I've written. So my rule for every post that I make is that I would feel comfortable sending this post as an email to everybody that I work with, so that all my colleagues, all the consultants could read it, because ultimately they can. And I also make sure that everything I write is evidence-based. You'll often see I may use a reference to a paper, because I think that, you know, we do have a huge responsibility as doctors, and what we put online must be really credible. So you should be able to back up anything that you're saying. So just talking about how I do work with brands. So as I said, I would never try and promote a healthcare product, but there are a lot of healthcare brands out there that do want to work with doctors. And so Always Discreet is a brand that you may have heard of. They make incontinence pads, and they wanted to start a campaign about urinary incontinence. And this is something that I think, you know, we need to talk about more. And so Fern McCann, now I had to Google who she was, I didn't know who she was, was part of the campaign that I worked on. And what I did was I worked into the contract that I wasn't promoting any products and I would not be photographed with products. But what I did was I provided medical information, and I checked through the information that they put out there about incontinence, and I made some content for them. So for example, I made a YouTube video explaining to the lay population what incontinence is, the different types, and how we might be able to treat it. So it was a really interesting experience, because actually how the commercial world works is very, very different. But yeah, this is just an example of how I have, I hope you would agree, responsibly worked with a brand. The other thing I do is I do a lot of work with charities. And so the Eve Appeal is a charity of which I'm an ambassador. So they are a gynecological cancer charity. If you are ever in need of information for your patients or even for yourself, highly recommend checking them out. They make loads of great information. And this picture is me doing a campaign for them. So Know Your Normal is one of their sort of taglines from their Get Lippy campaign. And, you know, that's what I'm all about. And again, that's what my book is all about. Just trying to educate people about what's normal and helping them to realize what's not. Another great charity that I've worked with is Bloody Good Period. So they are a charity and they're all about period poverty. So people that don't have access to period products, so pads, tampons, cups, that kind of thing. They've done some really good campaigns and really good work. And I worked with them and the Body Shop, as last year the Body Shop had little boxes in their stores where you could go and donate products. The Eve Appeal are a cervical cancer charity as well, who have also done some great charity work with, just kind of all about raising awareness and helping them to spread their message across social media. So it's been really fun, and I do actually think it can be really helpful. Now, this is something that I kind of tried, is using social media for research. So I don't know how many of you use Instagram, but you can publish an Instagram story where people can answer a question, and there's 24 hours to do so. So I said, have you noticed a change in your menstrual cycle or hormonal symptoms during lockdown? Because I was starting to get lots of questions about this. So within a 24-hour period, 5,677 people responded, which I was completely overwhelmed by. And 65% of people said yes, and 35% of people said no. So I thought that was quite interesting. It was a bit higher than I thought. So I published this on my Instagram grid because I think that sometimes just knowing that other people are going through something can be really comforting, particularly when it's something quite taboo like women's health. What I didn't realise was then that Vogue would be interested, and I never thought that a sort of pseudo research project that I'd done on social media would make it into Vogue. But I think this just really shows how much appetite there is for reliable health information, and also that the lay media are really disseminating, as I mentioned, what is a really taboo topic. I then thought, hey, you know what? I'm an academic. I need to look into this more. And I was really, really interested. So what I did was I wrote a research protocol and I put it through the ethics board at Imperial. It was quite funny because I had to get my professor to countersign it. And he said, research that's been published in Vogue. Well, how can I say no? So that was quite easy. But anyway, so I put this again on my Instagram. So I just posted this, I posted the post saying, can you help me with my research? And I put it up about 6 p.m. one evening, and then I went onto a research call on Zoom for an hour and didn't really think about it. And then I thought, let me see how many people have filled in the questionnaire. So I just did it via Qualtrics. And I couldn't believe it that 2,500 people had filled in what's basically like a 10 or 12-minute questionnaire within an hour. And I was pacing up and down my flat. My husband was like, what's wrong with you? I thought that you'd be happy that people responded. And I said, you don't understand. There's so much responsibility now to give people answers, if you like. So I left it up for 100 days and I got 15,500 responses. So that's pretty phenomenal. It's been great though, because I never thought that social media was going to help me further my research career, because I've now established an international research collaboration, because there is no way that little old me can analyze 15,500 responses. I thought maybe I would get 1,000, and I thought that maybe I was being a bit ridiculous thinking that, but anyway, watch this space, results coming soon. Obviously, there is a lot of interest from the media, and I have been on TV a few times. This is me on ITV this morning talking to Holly and Phil. They're so nice. It's very interesting going into a TV studio. It's basically like a massive cabin, all done up. Definitely a highlight was being on Women's Hour. That was pretty amazing. And the best part of it was that I got to meet Mary Berry. She is the nicest person you will ever meet. She was just so lovely, and she had made a tiramisu or a trifle or something on the day, and she had taken it into the studio. She was on before me, I was following her, and I went in and she said, "Ooh, make sure the young doctor gets a slice as well." Yeah, she was lovely. But ultimately, it's fun, it's a bit scary, it's a very fascinating look into a very, very different world compared to being in the hospital, on the wards, in clinic. Yeah, I don't know, it's probably not my favourite part of it, but it is interesting. But a lot of people would say, it sounds like a lot of work. is it really worth it? And it is a lot of work, but this is really, I think, the reason to do it. So I had posted in August about postmenopausal bleeding as part of a campaign with the Eve appeal. And a lady commented below the post and said, "Can't thank you enough for a similar post earlier this year. Currently recovering from an op to cure early stage endometrial cancer. Consulted doctor after reading post. Sadly had no idea I had a problem. So thank you. Doesn't even begin to express my gratitude. Fab info on women's health." Now, I can't really count the number of times I've said overwhelming today, but this was really quite overwhelming. And, you know, if I was the Daily Mail, I would say that social media detects and cures cancer. Now, obviously that's not true, but I just think this really shows the power that social media and good patient information can really have. So, as you can see, I do quite a lot, and I think it's really important to mention that first and foremost, I am Dr. Anita Mitra and not the Gynae Geek. But as part of my day-to-day job, obviously, the main thing I do is being a doctor, and I'm very much just a normal trainee, just like everyone else. There's lots of other things that I do in that capacity, and I do still do a lot of research, although I don't have a dedicated research position at the moment. I also supervise students and do editorial work. And I'm really keen to make sure that I do go the extra mile at work, because I think when people know that you have a side gig, I think if you're slacking, they're going to really, really notice. And I feel like it's really important that I don't take advantage of any of my colleagues and slack at work. But I do, you know, so much stuff on the side. And it's really amazing that actually just starting an Instagram account has given me access to so many incredible opportunities and things that I didn't know were out there. So yeah, it's been really, really fascinating. And although social media is a bit of a thorn in my side, it really has opened a lot of doors. So my final thoughts, that I think it is really important to be aware of what our patients are reading. And when you do look at social media, occasionally the Daily Mail, and, you know, just the internet in general, I think that you do see some of the sort of inaccurate things that are written, and also really interesting to just understand what they really think. Now, I'm not an influencer, but we are all influencers because we have so much knowledge and insight to share. And of course, we all do that every day in our clinical practice, but there are actually some quite interesting opportunities for doing this outside of work as well. Lots of people say, how do you find time for this? Well, you know, you can always find time for the things that you're passionate about. And it might not be everyone else's passion, but I think that if it's something that you are interested in doing, I would just give it a go. And my final thing is that we all have imposter syndrome. And if I had let imposter syndrome get in the way, then, you know, I wouldn't have had the incredible opportunities that I've had so far. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to speak to you today. So yeah, let me know what you think. Happy to take any questions. And thank you again to the organisers for inviting me to speak.
Thank you to everyone that made tonight's episode possible. Whenever our scholars are thinking about complex problems facing our health systems, we encourage them to think about how they make significant change in the world of healthcare. We are incredibly lucky to have some incredible scholars in the HLA. They use the HLA as a platform to take their ideas and bring them to fruition. If you are interested in the work of the HLA, why not join us at one of our future HLA events? Why not join one of our programs? Why not even become a HLA scholar? Thank you for joining us. My name is Johan Marlwaner, the Director of the HLA, and it's a good night from all of us.